"Can I hide in your car?" she gasped, trembling under the cold rain, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Her mascara was smeared, her hands shaking as she clutched the car door handle. The man inside slowly turned his head, his sharp eyes locking on hers through the fogged window. He didn't speak right away, but when he did, his voice was calm, deep, and dangerous. "Get in." What she didn't know, what she couldn't have imagined in her wildest fear-filled thoughts, was that the man she was begging for help from wasn't some ordinary stranger. He was Alessandro Romano, the quiet, feared mafia boss of the city, a man who had built an empire of power, loyalty, and silence. And tonight, fate had just dropped a terrified, desperate woman into his car like a storm. Rain hammered the roof as she slid into the passenger seat, dripping wet and shivering. "Please, please drive, he's coming," she pleaded, glancing over her shoulder as if a monster were following her. Alessandro didn't ask questions, he simply pressed the accelerator. The car surged forward into the darkness, the city lights streaking behind them like fading memories. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sounds were the wipers squeaking and her uneven breaths. "Who's after you?" he finally asked, his tone neutral. She hesitated. "My ex," she whispered. He won't let me go. I left him a month ago, but he found me again tonight. I thought I could get away, but he tried to force me back." Her voice cracked. Alessandro's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He didn't show emotion often, years in the underworld had taught him to bury it deep, but something about her trembling voice, her raw fear, scraped against a part of him he thought was long gone. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Lena," she said, "Lena Brooks." He gave a small nod. "You're safe now, Lena." She wanted to believe him, but she couldn't stop shaking. She kept glancing behind, expecting headlights to appear. "You don't understand," she said. "He's dangerous if he finds me." Alessandro interrupted her with a glance that could freeze fire. "Then he'll regret it." Something in his tone made her fall silent. It wasn't arrogance, it was certainty. This man, whoever he was, carried the kind of confidence that came from surviving things most people couldn't imagine. When they reached an old mansion on the outskirts of the city, Alessandro parked and opened her door. "Come inside, you need to dry off." She hesitated. Everything in her screamed not to trust strangers, but something in his eyes, something steady and strangely kind beneath the coldness, made her follow. Inside, the warmth hit her immediately. The mansion was elegant but empty, echoing with loneliness. A single fire burned in the living room, casting golden light across the marble floor. Alessandro handed her a towel and a blanket. "Sit," he said simply. She obeyed, still unsure who he really was. Minutes passed. The storm outside grew wilder, rattling the windows. Lena began to relax, her breathing slowing. "Thank you," she murmured. "I didn't mean to intrude, I just had nowhere else to go." He looked at her from across the room, the firelight flickering across his sharp features. "You did what you had to do," he said. "Never apologize for surviving." Those words pierced her heart. Over the next few hours, Lena told him bits and pieces of her story. She had once been engaged to a wealthy businessman named Victor who turned out to be cruel and possessive. When she tried to leave, he used his power to destroy her reputation, even cost her job. She'd been living quietly since, until he found her again tonight. Alessandro listened without interrupting. Something about her pain stirred an old wound in him. Years ago, he too had lost someone, a woman who had trusted the wrong people and paid with her life. He'd built his empire out of vengeance, but it had only left him hollow. Now this trembling stranger was sitting in his house, and for the first time in years he felt something. When dawn came, Lena woke up on the couch wrapped in the blanket. The smell of coffee filled the air. Alessandro was standing by the window, dressed in a black suit, speaking softly into a phone. "Yes," he said coldly. "Find out everything about a man named Victor Hayes, make it quiet." Lena froze, the tone of his voice, the authority in it, it wasn't normal. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. He turned, expression unreadable. "Someone who doesn't tolerate men who hurt women." That answer should have scared her. Instead, it made her heart pound. Later that day, Alessandro dropped her at a safe place, an apartment owned by one of his trusted men. He left her with groceries, cash, and a warning: "Don't go out, not until I tell you it's safe." Lena didn't understand why he was helping her. She didn't even know his last name. But for the first time in months, she felt hope. Days passed. One night the doorbell rang. She opened it to find Alessandro standing there. His eyes were softer now. "It's done," he said. "What is?" she asked. Victor won't bother you again. His words carried weight, but his tone was calm. Let's just say he understands consequences now. Tears welled up in her eyes. Why did you help me? He hesitated, then said quietly, because someone once begged me for help and I didn't move fast enough. Silence filled the room, then she stepped closer, her hand trembling as she touched his sleeve. You did this for me, a stranger. He smiled faintly. You're not a stranger anymore. From that day, Alessandro visited often. He brought her books, food, small gifts. They talked for hours. Slowly, Lena learned about his world, the loneliness, the walls he'd built around himself. And he learned about hers, the broken dreams, the courage it took to start again. One night, as they sat watching the city lights through the window, she said softly, I was running from fear that night, but maybe I ran into the person I was meant to find. He looked at her, something unguarded flickering in his eyes. Lena, I'm not a good man. She smiled gently, maybe not, but you did a good thing. For the first time in years, Alessandro laughed, a real laugh, the kind that sounds like it came from somewhere deep and long forgotten. Months later, Lena rebuilt her life. She opened a small bakery, her hands steady again, her eyes bright, and every morning a black car would park across the street. He never came inside, but she knew he was watching over her. Then one day he did walk in. You're early, she teased. I was hungry, he replied, a small smile tugging his lips. For coffee and maybe for something more. She handed him a cup, their fingers brushed. The silence that followed was full, not empty. He looked into her eyes and said quietly, that night you asked to hide in my car, maybe it wasn't you who needed saving. Tears filled her eyes as she smiled. Maybe we both did.